So Tuesday night, I was scrolling before bed and I saw a very interesting YouTube video, and I figured I would cover it in today's episode of the podcast. So without further ado, welcome to this week's episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and the video that I saw on Tuesday night was essentially about growth. And not just growth like in general, but like in a spiritual sense. So we're probably for the first time ever in the podcast, we're finally going to be doing some of the divine talking aspects of the podcast, which is actually very interesting. And I'm not sure how long that's going to be for, but we'll see how long this goes. So anyway, so the video starts with a person asking the universe for a new thing and then explains kind of like why they want it. The universe then snaps its finger, and all of a sudden everything that person had built up until that point just disintegrates, like Thanos snap, like disintegrates out of existence. And then the person gets pretty upset and basically asks the universe why it did that. It just basically, like, essentially saying to the universe that the universe just ruined that person's life. To which the universe replies that if this person wants this new thing, they have to grow. Like, if they don't grow, they don't meet the criteria for this new thing. So the universe essentially was just saying, in doing so, I purged everything that no longer serves you. And then the person is kind of scared because now they want to go back to the way things were. They want their old life back. And the universe asks, is that really what you want? And then proceeds to explain that growth is, normal. It's part of life. And that if you don't grow, you get set in your own ways, your old ways, your old habits, your old routines, like everything. Like nothing changes. It's like the same thing day in, day out. And then asks the person if that's what they want. And the person says, no, not really. But the person then states that they're scared because they're afraid that they're not going to have the life that they literally have right now if they get this new thing. So the universe says that it's understandable, but that's part of growing, and that person will have the life that they had before again, but with better people. And that's essentially the whole metaphor of life is when you want something new, when you ask for it, whether you're religious and you pray to God or whatever religious highest deity is that you believe in, whether it's, praying to the universe. In my case, I believe that God and the universe are one and the same. So it doesn't really matter if you pray to the universe or pray to God. You're basically praying to the highest divine figure that created everything, basically. But when you want something, you basically are going to go through something that is known as bushwhacking. And it's basically like everything in your life that doesn't serve you is literally just going to be stripped away. Because in order for you to get this new job opportunity, or to get this new car, or to get this new house, or even just to rent a house or something, is going to require you to leave some old habits and, people behind. Because that's part of growing, is that nothing is forever, in the sense of as you grow, your life grows with you. So old ways, old habits, old people that don't serve a purpose in your life anymore will be pulled away. Now, does that mean that everybody is going to be pulled away from you? No, absolutely not. The people that are meant to stay in your life will always be there. So if you're afraid of losing somebody, just know that if they're truly meant to be in your life, they'll stay. Even if you move, like in the case for me being in the US, even if you move like 3 states over and you're like 8 hours away now and you're like best friends with somebody, if that person is truly meant to be a close lifelong friend, it doesn't matter if you live 4 states over 12 hours away, or if you even live on like the West Coast and they move to the East Coast. and vice versa. Because if that person is meant to be a lifelong friend, you could be on the other side of the country and it doesn't matter because that person is meant to be in your life. And who knows? Maybe one day you will move back because a better opportunity will bring you back there. Or maybe that person will move out to the East Coast because they have an opportunity that's better for them, and then you guys will reunite at some point. It's possible. The world works, well, not the world, but the universe works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways. So, really, the whole point of the video is that, like, when you feel like everything is falling apart around you, it's usually a really good sign that something bigger and better is coming your way. And even if you don't feel like you're ready for it, it's going to happen and it's going to be scary. But once you take that step towards that new opportunity or new life path that the universe has for you, it'll be worth it. It's just taking that first step is always the scariest part. But once you do it, it only gets easier from there. And sometimes it is hard. Sometimes it's very scary, very high anxiety, very, fear driven because you don't know who you're going to meet. You might have to go to an entirely new area or even move back to an old spot. Like, for example, if somehow, some way through, like, whether it be LinkedIn or Indeed.com or something like that, I get a message from a supervisor or a general manager from a manufacturing plant. We'll just say because my dad and my sister used to work for Baxter Healthcare. We'll say that there's a plant near where my dad and my sister live, the same one that they used to work at. And a GM or a plant manager messages me and they say, hey, we saw your resume. We'd like to, interview you and give you a position if you're interested. Now, let me just say this. The specific plant that my sister and my dad used to work at for Baxter, and even my mom when she was younger, not a good place. Not a good place. Very just miscommunication. The way that they treat employees isn't exactly the greatest. It's a very stressful environment, which, by the way, it really depends on the management. If the management is stressing and constantly pushing their stress on their employees that are on the production floor, obviously that's going to make its way all the way down, and it's just going to make it for a very, very terrible environment. So always just keep that in mind. But let's say hypothetically, for this example, let's just say hypothetically, this specific Baxter plant actually did a 180 and it's actually a really good place. And theoretically, just again, hypothetically, is better than the place that I work at now. And in terms of environment, because really and truly, that plant specifically would pay me more for just being a packer. I'd get like probably $22 an hour for being a packer alone, rather than what I'm making right now at my current job. But let's just say they want me to be a machine operator. And they're like, we'll pay you $27 to run a machine and tell packers what to do. That's not a bad deal. That's a really good deal. But then the problem is, now I have to leave where I currently live at. And that means that I would no longer get to see like the, 4, 5, 6 friends that I've made at my current job. Because now I have to move back to where my dad and my sister live to get this job opportunity. It's more money and the environment is better. But the problem is me personally, I would worry about losing those connections. But at the end of the day, I also know that if these people are meant to stay in my life, that it doesn't matter if I move 2 hours away, I'm still going to get to talk to these people, whether it be through Facebook Messenger, messages on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever their preferred method of communication is, I will still be able to have contact with them. So it's not the end of the world. We might drift apart and not talk as often, but if they're really meant to be in my life, it doesn't matter how busy they get, I'll always hear back from them, even if it takes like 3 months for them to reply. I still know that they're meant to be in my life because they responded. They're just very busy, right? Now, obviously, that was a hypothetical. That specific plant that Baxter owns, that my dad and my sister used to work at, is still as terrible as it was way back when, 30 years ago, even like 30, 40 years ago when my dad, first started working there. The environment is equally as bad. The management is equally as stressed out and pushing all their stress on all of their, production floor employees. So I would never go there. I don't think the stress of it all and the terrible environment is really worth the $27 to be an operator. So, I mean, at that point, for that level of stress, you might as well give me 30 or 32 and maybe I'll consider it. But that's just an example. And that's essentially what this video was trying to say, is that things are going to have to be stripped and left behind because they no longer serve you. That also means maybe in the process, because you make more money and maybe you have to change shifts, maybe your second shift, / night shift, not like overnight, like third shift, but what would be equivalent to second shift. So now, instead of going to bed somewhere between midnight and 4 in the morning, now you actually got to get up at somewhere between 4 to 6 in the morning. And now you got to go back to working in the daytime. But in the process, you're also getting more money. So maybe you can afford to eat better and afford organic stuff and afford a gym membership and have more time, because maybe this new opportunity will have you working a normal 40 hours, maybe the occasional overtime, but not a lot of overtime. So you have plenty of time to go to the gym and do a bunch of other things that you probably didn't have time to do before because you're getting paid more. So it's everything works out. You just have to change some habits now, right? Because now instead of getting up at instead of going to bed at 4, maybe you have to get up at 4. So that's a complete 24-hour change, because instead of going to bed at 4, now you're getting up at 4. So it's it throws your body for a loop. But there's also some health benefits to actually being a first shifter / day shifter, because that's more of what our bodies are used to, right? So it's not as bad as you think, because yeah, it is hard, it is scary, but the payoff for whatever it is well worth it. And you never know, because that place might be a workplace where you actually do move up instead of just staying in the same spot and just kind of being man, I've proven myself time and time again. Why am I not moving up? And this could be the place where you finally do move up. And then maybe you want to start your own business, or you want to do something on the side, like a side hustle that might become your main source of income. For example, me with this podcast. Maybe someday in a year, this podcast blows up to something big where I can just do this once a week, and the views that I get on it would be more than enough for me to sustain an income where I might only need a part-time job, because I make enough from the ad revenue and money of being a content creator that I could literally just work a part-time job for a little extra spending money. Or maybe I start a second channel, WIllspiration is podcasting, but maybe I do WIllspiration gaming and I tackle topics, or maybe I do, some sort of Pokemon channel and become a Poketuber and do this podcast and do Pokemon content. And between those two things taking off in say a year or so, I could literally just do content creation and have a comfortable means, especially if I grow really quick. Say I hit, 400K on this channel someday within the next year or two. And then I immediately, because I have people that might like gaming and Pokemon, they follow my gaming channel, and then that takes off even more. And maybe I hit 600,000 in a year and a half. All of a sudden, combined between both channels with the ad revenue, that's essentially almost 1 million subscribers. Now, I don't have to rely as much. Maybe if I have some time here and there, I might work a part-time job just out of boredom, but I don't need the part-time job. You know what I mean? So if that were to happen, there would be a lot of changes. And then I could afford my own house. Or maybe, who knows, maybe I get one of those 2-story tiny houses that Amazon's selling for like $29,500. And I buy a plot of land and I pay someone to hook up, the sewage, the water, and the electrical. And then Amazon just drops off this little tiny 2-story house, hook everything up together, and boom. I have like a nice big plot of land, a nice, sturdy house that'll last for, at least guaranteed 20 years according to Amazon. But I got there, but it'll be when I'm ready for it. And sometimes the universe will have you make changes, because the only way that you'll get that stuff is if you change the way that you think, or change the way that you eat, or take better care of yourself, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Once your 4 bodies are more aligned, then you'll be ready for this new opportunity. Sometimes you might actually have people in your life that are holding you back, and that could be the reason why you're not really going anywhere, and you may not even realize it. There's a whole multitude of things that could be preventing you from getting to where you want to be. And for me personally, I've learned throughout my life that it's, especially within like the last 5 years since being diagnosed as ADHD, so autistic and ADHD, but your mindset makes a huge difference. Like if you ask my Reiki teacher how I was in 2019 when I first set foot into this metaphysical shop that she works at, and then just within the last 5 years when I finally started doing my spiritual journey and my, healing, that I've made such a massive improvement. And a lot of that is mindset. And a good mindset really does go a long way. And I remember posting this in an Instagram comment one time on a video, and someone came after me in the comments, saying that that's total bullshit, and I've had a good mindset. I always have a positive mindset. I'm always happy. I always treat people with kindness, love, and respect. And yet, I've been assaulted. I've been, abused. I've been, bullied and all these other things. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that what you're going through and what you've been through isn't valid, and that everything that has came from that isn't valid. It totally is. I mean, lived experiences are a real thing, but you can't call someone's lived experience bullshit because your life wasn't the same way. And part of, going through very traumatic things is also healing. I mean, it's very scary, especially when you have things like, complex PTSD, or even just regular PTSD, or if you have really bad anxiety and OCD and depression. Healing is a very scary thing, but it is possible. It's not that healing doesn't mean invalidating what you're going through. It doesn't mean that you're not saying, oh, whatever happened to me, it's whatever, I don't care about it anymore. Because it's, especially when it's something that's traumatic, it's going to be with you the rest of your life. If you have days where, that trauma resurfaces, that's normal, that's healthy, that's okay. But you also have to not let yourself be taken over by that, because then you become stagnant. Healing especially from trauma, is essentially your life will continue to grow around the trauma. Eventually, your trauma will be just a small part of you that, when you think about it, yeah, it's still going to make you, shudder and, trigger a fear response. But it's also not going to be so prevalent where when it happens, it takes control of you, whether it be for minutes, hours, days, or even weeks, or even months. It'll just be like maybe for a few minutes, and then you learn, how to ground yourself and sit yourself in the present and just allow yourself to feel that again and know how to just release it, because you know that you're safe. You know that you're not in that situation anymore. And that's literally healing. It's not saying that healing is not saying that all those traumatic things are invalid and that you have no right to feel like that anymore. If you still have those traumatic feelings and that fear, it's valid. It's just not letting it control you anymore. It's like learning to acknowledge that it's a part of you, but not letting it control you. And that's the same with any form of like mental and emotional healing, is knowing that it's okay to feel those emotions and remember those memories and thoughts, but that they don't control you anymore, because you're in a safe space now. You're doing better. You're, whether it be in a healthy relationship or you're living with parents or siblings or family members, and you know that you're safe. You know that you're not in that situation anymore. It also teaches you a learning experience. So now you know in the future what to keep an eye out for. And most importantly, in the process, you learn more about yourself, and you start learning more about others, and you start learning how to look for red flags and go, okay, not going to go down that road again. I know what happened last time. And I think that that's just like the most amazing part about all of this when it comes to spiritual stuff, is you will be surprised how healing actually not only makes you feel better, but also makes you a better person, because now you can use those experiences to help others, because now you understand that anybody that you see could be going through something. And that, I think, is a beautiful thing, because that teaches us how to connect to other people. It's like Reiki. With Reiki, I can sense people's energies. I kind of have an idea of what people, might be feeling. If their energy makes me feel a certain way, and even to the point where it feels like my emotions are changing, then it kind of gives me idea like maybe this person's uncomfortable. Maybe this person has a lot on their mind and they're very anxious. Maybe this person is just tired and they don't really give a shit right now because all they want to do is sleep. It kind of gives me that idea. It's not like mind reading, but it's just kind of the way that someone's energy can make you feel kind of gives you a rough estimate of what they could be going through or what could be on their mind. But it's not mind reading. Most of the time it gives you a rough ballpark of where they are, and you kind of know like, this person's energy kind of tells me don't fuck around with them right now. Or this person's energy feels sad, so like maybe they're anxious, maybe they're depressed, maybe something just happened and they don't want to talk about it, so they're just trying to hold it together. So yeah, they may be smiling on the outside, but they're not smiling on the inside, they're sad on the inside. That's basically all it is. And between therapy and Reiki and just, working on just connecting more with the spiritual side of things has helped me understand people so much, to the point where I feel like it's helped me navigate this world as a neurodivergent person more than trying to learn how to understand neurotypicals. Don't get me wrong, I'm still learning how to understand neurotypicals. For example, my dad told me I need to apologize to my sister because apparently my sister got offended because I got mad because she wanted to put me under guardianship because I did this life coach program with my Reiki teacher for 6 months. And it was a good chunk of change, but it was reasonably priced. So I can't really, I don't think there's really any reason why anyone or myself should be upset, because I think compared to a lot of life coaching, programs, it was actually a really good deal. And it tackled things from a spiritual perspective, which made more sense to me. And that 6 months helped me greatly. Did it put me in a financial situation? Yes. Am I still struggling now? Also, yes. But at the same time, it might have been a learning experience on how to deal with stress, how to manage that, because maybe all of this that's happening to me now is leading me up so that I can finally take that step to be a leader and be like, no matter how stressful things get, I can keep a level head, be able to problem solve without spiraling into anxiety, and be able to find a solution rather than just sitting here and panicking, almost having a meltdown because it feels like everything's falling apart. And that could be exactly why this was meant to happen. And there are people like my dad and my sister that say, oh, spiritualism is bullshit, it's demonic, it's against God. But in my honest opinion, I feel like that's why a lot of people don't connect to any sort of faith, is because they don't have that spiritual training. They don't take care of their spiritual bodies. Because I'll put this into perspective. In the Bible, it says that God breathed life into humans, right? So every time a baby's born, or right before they come into the world of the living, God breathes his breath into this life. It's a small fragment of God's soul. So, in a way, we all have some sort of spiritual attunement to, the afterlife, to the, spiritual world, to divine. And people that continuously deny that are the people that typically will, go to church and they don't really go anywhere. They could pray to God all they want, but it's like it doesn't really do anything because they're not really taking care of their spiritual bodies. And that's why, for me, I feel like metaphysics, because I'm just going to call it metaphysics, because spiritualism has its own systematic beliefs that stem off of metaphysical practices, right? So let's just drop the spiritualism part. Let's just call it what it is, metaphysics. So by taking care of yourself in a metaphysical way, you're actually taking care of yourself in your spiritual body. And that really does truly strengthen your connection to the divine and the spiritual world. And as a result, it also it helps you become a better person, because that's when you start being able to feel out people's energy. That's when you can actually feel the atmosphere of a room. That's when you can actually tell just by looking at somebody's eyes that even if they're smiling, and they can fake a smile so perfect that you would never think that they had something going on inside, when you look into their eyes, you can see what's actually going on inside them. Is it to the level of like Jesus where you can heal people? No. I mean, even with Reiki, when I perform Reiki, I mean, the pain, yeah, sure, it dulls pain, but even then, it either dulls it, or if it's a small pain, removes the pain completely, but it's only temporary. It'll come back eventually. And that's because even as humans, we are only able to do so much. The only reason why Jesus was able to heal people fully, and why the healing effects were permanent, was because he was, essentially God incarnate. That's why. Do I believe that people could get to that level? Maybe get to the level of being able to heal small wounds, but like not to the point where you can cure any illness, or bring back or give sight to a person who's blind like Jesus could. But maybe you can help heal a small cut faster with Reiki, because Reiki does nullify pain and reduces pain if it's kind of a larger pain. But even like my Reiki teacher was saying that she cut her finger one time and it was kind of deep, like she needed stitches. So she just kept Reikiing her finger. And after, this whole thing happened, it was probably somewhere between, I can't remember if she said it was 40 minutes or like an hour and a half. But by the time she finally got in at the ER to have her finger looked at, like the cut was already starting to heal. And sadly, because medical reasons, they basically had to, reopen the wound, clean it out to make sure it didn't get infected. And then from there, she could Reiki her finger again. And it did help speed it up. and there's like no scar there. So it is possible, but only to a small degree, like small cuts, for example. So to me, that's very interesting because it just shows that we do have these abilities, albeit to a way smaller degree compared to Jesus, but we can do it. But the only way we have access to it is if we work on our spiritual body. And as long as we actually use this for good. That's why, for me, I want to do Reiki, but I don't want to, I want to do it as a side hustle, but not as a side hustle at the same time. Because there's the concept of it's transactional. You have to get something out of it. And it turns out that that's just kind of a personal belief. Because really, if you go back further into the history of Reiki, it was just something that people did. It was like a free service. Maybe some people would be like, I'll perform Reiki on you. In return, you give me an apple or a tomato or, some food or something. Obviously before money became a thing. Now the transaction is if I perform Reiki, I expect payment. But for me, I kind of don't like doing that because I feel like if it's something that is supposed to help people, you shouldn't charge for it. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that just kind of dulls the ability because it's you're oh, here, I performed Reiki for 30 minutes. Give me $20. And it's just kind of to me, it feels wrong. It feels wrong. Obviously, everybody needs to make a living. So, if I really had to, I would have to, I would charge for it. Obviously, if it means getting more income, especially right now, because everything's high in prices. But preferably, I would rather not. I would rather, just do it just to do it. No transaction needed, just out of the kindness of my own heart. But my Reiki teacher says, that also leaves you vulnerable and open up to being taken advantage of. Because then people are going to be like, oh, I need more Reiki. Oh, I need more Reiki. Oh, I need more Reiki. At some point, you got to, put your foot down and be like, no, if you're going to continue to see me for Reiki, I'm going to have to start charging you. So, and by that same token, it is understandable why you would charge somebody, because now it's if someone can afford it, they'll do it. If they can't afford it, they'll do it that one time, see how they feel, see if they like it or not, and then decide if they want to start setting money aside to see you regularly for Reiki. So it makes total sense. So that way you're not taken advantage of for your service. But I still feel there's a part of me that just doesn't feel like Reiki is the capability of Reiki is being fully utilized because there's some sort of transaction, even though the transaction is used to protect yourself from being taken advantage of and protecting you from other people's energies, which makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like that also limits the Reiki's potential because it almost feels like it's more beneficial for you to do it on yourself because there is no transaction. You are doing it to yourself, so you don't have to pay yourself $20, $30, $40, however much people want to charge for Reiki. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my whole stance on that. But still, just when you start doing that kind of stuff, it really does help. And I truly believe that. And it's funny because even now I'm starting to, look up stuff online, and it seems like science is finally starting to run tests on things that are metaphysics. There have been recordings that are recorded studies that are coming out now that are still preliminary studies, but they're saying, how people have a, glow faintly in the dark. And that's the reason why infrared vision is the reason why you can pick up, different heat signatures in the body. But it turns out that if our eyes were more attuned to it, we would actually be able to see our bodies glowing. And that faint glow is essentially aura, right? That's your life force energy that's visible. So that kind of proves the existence of, auras and life force energy being visible, just not to the naked eye. but through technology, you can see it. So now it's like, okay, well, if auras are real and, other things like Reiki have somewhat documented proof of being able to heal people, be it temporarily or permanently, if it's something small, like a small little cut, like a paper cut or something. There's more to this metaphysics that eventually may actually be acknowledged as real, rather than just people laughing at you and thinking that you're crazy and saying that what you're doing is satanic and against God's will. But it's like my Reiki teacher says, if it was something that was demonic and evil, then it wouldn't be designed to help. And that's basically where I'm going to leave that. So, moral of this week's episode is basically growth and healing is a part of life. No matter how scary and painful it may be, everything works out in the end. Having a more open and positive mindset definitely helps as well. But really and truly, once you start working on your spiritual body by practicing metaphysical things like meditating, doing Reiki, one of the things that I like to do when I do that kind of stuff is listening to music that's in 432 hertz, specifically meditation music, doing things like yoga or even just going through walks in nature, and anything that really just kind of takes you away from the everyday human experience and allows you to connect more with the world and more with the spiritual realm. Those things help grow your spiritual body. And that's pretty much my closing statement on that. So with that, I'm going to end this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I would say watching, but I never have anything playing in the background of the video anyway. So, or I guess, well, not the background, but I don't have anything playing on the video, I guess is what I should say. So thank you for listening. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, because the notification bell will let you know when I upload new episodes of the podcast. And with that, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy the 3-day weekend for Memorial Day, unless you're planning to work Memorial Day for overtime, or in my case, if you're just scheduled to work normally and have tomorrow or Sunday off for Memorial Day. Regardless, enjoy your long weekend, and I hope you have a good start to your next week, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.